If this goes on, don't panic. Bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction.
Good afternoon and welcome to If This Goes On, Don't Panic. We are bringing hope to the world through speculative fiction, and I'm really excited about our guests today. We have two authors that I have had the opportunity to work with in the past. I think they're amazing, and Alan has their bios.
Yes. Also, this is episode 10 of the Quarantine Club, if people are keeping track. So I don't get confused.
Yeah, that's probably more apt, eh?
Okay, so today we have Leo McBride. He is a journalist, editor, and fiction writer. He has been published previously in each of the Inklings press anthologies, along with collections from the Sci-Fi Roundtable, Rhetoric Askew, Starklight Press, and elsewhere. He has also self-published his own short story collection, Quartet, available on Amazon, and ghostwritten a number of biographies. You can find more of his work on his blog, www.alteredinstinct.com. Excuse me. On Twitter as @AlteredInstinct, which is ALTEREDINSTINCT. And on Facebook at facebook.com/LEOMCBRIDEAUTHOR. Okay. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you very much.
And we also have his partner in crime, Ricardo Victoria. Ricardo is a Mexican writer with a PhD in design and an emphasis in sustainability from I'm going to mispronounce this, Loughborough University, and a love of fiction, board games, comic books, and action figures. He lives in Toluca, Mexico with his wife and pet dogs, and works as a full-time lecturer and researcher at the local university. Excuse me. Jeez. My allergies today. He writes mainly science fantasy. His first novel, Tempest Blades, The Withered King, was released in August 2019 by Shadow Dragon Press, an imprint of Artemisia. I hope I'm getting that right.
Artemisia.
Publishing. Yeah. Artemisia?
Artemisia. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. The sequel, Tempest Blades, Cursed Titans, is due for publication in August 2021. He has a number of stories published by Inklings Press and other indie outlets. His short story, Twilight of the Mesozoic Moon, jointly written with Brent A. Harris, was nominated for a Sidewise Award for short-form alternative history. You can find out more at his website, http://RicardoVictoriau.com. I'll spell that out. RicardoVictoriau.com. Or follow him on Twitter at WingedLeo, WINGED_LEO. All right, so welcome, Ricardo.
Thank you for the invitation.
I was really excited that you guys were willing to accept it and come on the show. These guys work together on Inklings Press, which is a small press publisher it's interesting because it kind of bridges the gap between the indie publishing world and the mainstream publishing world. They've gotten a lot of attention for their very small operation because they continue to produce excellent quality work. So I'm really glad to have you guys here, and I can't wait to talk the industry, science fiction, fantasy. It's going to be great.
Oh, we're really flattered to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation, both of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, so Alan, did you want to start? You said you had a whole bunch of questions you wanted to ask these guys.
Sure. So I guess let's just start with the Inklings, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, so tell the audience about the Inklings. What is it exactly? What is your goal? And how did that come together?
Oh.
Well, in large part, a big part of the driving force behind it was Ricardo. I got to give credit where it's due. He was the man who really sort of like kicked it all off. It started off in perhaps one of the strangest places, in that we all pretty much met together over gaming. Each of us in the initial group used to play a game called HeroClix. Don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's a superhero tabletop game. And over in England, we used to play. We were all in different parts, and we would meet up at conventions, and we would play against each other. So my first encounter with Ricardo was glaring at him across a table, trying to figure out how to beat him.
Right, you actually kicked me in under 3 minutes. So don't say that.
It's true. I kicked his ass and I laughed while doing it. I'm so ashamed. But after that, we kept in touch over time. Ricardo moved back to Mexico. And another chap who's part of the group, Brent Harris, he moved back to the US. He's now living in Italy. Another member of the group is Rob Edwards, who he lived in London at the time, and he now lives in Finland. And I drifted off to the Bahamas. But we still knew each other from back then. And Ricardo was very much a driving force in saying, look, all of us do some writing. Let's see about trying to encourage one another to write more. So it wasn't just the four of us. It was beyond that. There was a whole group of others who were all in with the idea of, let's do something. So that's pretty much how it all started to gather together. And once we started doing some writing, we thought to ourselves, well, hey, we've got the skills to be able to put together a book, put together a publication that we can put out. So let's go beyond just writing and sharing stories between us, and let's produce a book. And so Ricardo there, he's the design guy. I do the editing behind the scenes. And so book 1 came out. That was some time ago now, and we're now up to book 9 with lots of submissions coming in from here, there, and everywhere. But I always doff my cap and say, thank you, Ricardo, because you're the man.
No, I'm the one that should thank you, because, to be honest, Leo is the one that does the heavy lifting. When we're producing the anthologies, he's the one that knows how to format the book, how to edit it, because he has more experience in those fields. I'm just the guy doing the covers. I don't do that much. So no,
but they're spectacular covers. I mean, seriously, like, here, I'll post a link here in the chat. This happens to be Leo's Amazon page, but you can see a lot of the covers from Inklings Press there, and they're just stunning. You know, I love the unique style. There's always, like, this is worth mentioning, right? Covers sell a book. People don't realize how important it is to have a good cover to sell a book. And a cover it's like the movie poster, right? So it's got to market the book. It's got to say what it's about. It's got to appeal to a particular style and genre. Otherwise, people feel like they've been promised the wrong thing when they read it, you know. And I love your work. It's striking. You immediately, when you're flipping through a page of stuff on Amazon on science fiction and fantasy, you see one of your covers and you stop.
That's what I like to hear.
Exactly.
You made my day.
It's true, though. I mean, go back and look. What was that in the early 2000s when it was just like a picture of the character on the front with like very little context? Like, I just never liked those covers, you know, and they never attracted me to the books.
I think we've very much learned as we've gone as well. I think you have to, if you stick in any trade or any business for any while, then you learn what works, what doesn't. And so I think as we've gone along, we've we've added more to sort of like how we produce the material. Like the first book we produced was a five story collection of fantasy stories, all produced by people from within our writing group. And now if we compare that to our latest book, where we've got, you know, sort of like designed frontispieces for each of the stories, the wraparound cover, you know, graphics that people can use for promotional purposes for the writers who are published in the anthology, even sort of like little animated GIFs and things like that to put out on social media, just to try and attract the eye a bit more, just to draw people in, make them aware of who you are, raise your hand and say, "Hey, I'm here." So I think we've learned as we've gone. Would you agree with that, Ricardo?
Yeah, I mean, the first cover we produced was pretty simple, I have to admit it. It was like the first attempt, let's see how this works. And now is as soon as we have the theme and more or less an idea which stories are going to be included, we start looking for images and developing the layout. Basically, putting all this stuff because Leo also studied a bit of design in school, so we put together all the stuff we learn in school and in our professional lives, and also as fans of science fiction or fantasy, which kind of covers we like. So we start trying to improve them to make it more eye-catching, more. Yeah, they are interesting for the audience. So hopefully they are going to spend a few minutes, check the book, and if they like it, buy it and read it. So yes, it's a constant improvement, especially in design. You need to keep updating yourself every single day, because there are new tendencies in design, new layouts, new fonts, new color schemes, and you need to stay up to date if you want to compete with in what is a pretty much saturated market, because that's the reality of publishing. There are hundreds of books every week, and you need to be able to distinguish your book from others so you can attract readers.
I will freely confess to spending way too much time on font websites, looking at different fonts and going, "Ooh, what could you do with that?"
Yeah, me too. That, and in DeviantArt, looking at palette swatches and new ways to color fonts. I mean, if you compare the first cover of Inklings Press with the latest one with Tales from the Pirates Cove, you can see that I have been playing a lot with palette swatches and brushes and fonts, and then Leo sent me, this font is very interesting, try something with it. That's how they come to be.
Yeah, I've had a very interesting experience with the Inkling Press books, and I think, Leo, it might have been you that sent me like the first one and another one, maybe it was the Alternative Earths one.
Yeah, I think that was the one I sent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So and then I've read the stories from the Pirates Cove, or Tales from the Pirates Cove, and so I went and I read your first one that you ever did, and then I've read the most recent one. I never quite got to the Alternative Earths one, and it's just interesting to see how far you guys have come between one and the other, and not just in like the packaging and stuff, but like also as writers, you guys have improved quite a bit. And that's not like, I'm not trying to say that like in a negative way. I'm just like,
I don't think we can take that in a negative way. I think that's all positive.
I think it's a good thank you for saying that, because it shows that we have put the work in it. This is a craft you need to practice every single day.
Yeah,
but I mean, that's where it started out as well. I think one of the keys to, because there's many people who might be listening to this show who have their own writing groups and everything like that. I think the key that was useful for us at the beginning was a willingness to listen to each other, a willingness to try and always improve on what we've been doing, and not just settle for what anyone had put out. Always sort of like make sure that if we're putting something out, it's of a certain quality, so that it's So it always drives us on. And I think one of the key things is listening and being able to find somebody whose advice on stories that you can trust.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I also like what Ricardo had to say about it's a craft and you have to continue to practice to be better at it. There's no other way to do it, right? We have a couple of questions and comments from the audience. First of all, we have a couple of hydrate checks, probably because Alan was clearing his throat while doing the introductions. And we have a posture check. That's just something that channel points can do on my Twitch channel. People can say, straighten up your posture and take a drink of something. So, comment from Lorena Lay. She says, those covers are pretty, definitely different from the rugged, athletic main character holding up genre-specific weapon of awesome in a dramatic pose.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and...
I haven't been up torsos, it must be said.
Exactly, right? Okay, and then from Barbarossa Sparklebeard, who I know is also a writer, he says, I was once told that a story is only as good as its first sentence or its hook. How do you create that essential hook for your readers, at least one that you like?
You want to go?
That's tough.
You or me?
Go ahead.
I mean, I can only speak for how my writing process goes. And I would say half of my stories, I come up with either a first line or a last line, and then want to write the rest of the story around those. So, I might have had a hook for the story right from the beginning, and then worked and built up the rest of the story around those. Sometimes that's great because it gets you off to a flying start. Other times, I can think, for example, there's one story which I've got one of the best first lines I have written for, and I've got no clue what the rest of the story is. So that's that in a work in progress for me to come back to.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, been there.
But for the other half of the stories, I would say it's easy to get too hung up on worrying about that first sentence, and that it's good if you can just get your head down, get on with the rest of it, and then come back to it once you've got the story more fully formed in your head and you know what kind of statement, what kind of impact you want to make with an opening line. But that's just me. So, Ricardo, what's your approach?
Well, my approach is very chaotic, to be honest. I usually write the ending first. I kind of follow the Pixar method. No, I don't know if you have heard of it, but when Pixar sets the writers to develop a movie, they write the ending first, and then they work backwards. So I do that too. I write the ending. Usually in my stories, the last line is one of the characters saying something or a concept, and I work backwards. So the last thing I write is the first line of the story, because by then I know what I need to say to open and present to the reader what the story is going to be about. So I also try to get first a concept of what I'm going to do or what I want to say with the story, because I started writing comic book scripts. I tend to think in a very visual way, because when I was in college, I worked in a few comics with a few friends. So that's why I write. I basically trying to transform my script, a visual script in my head, into a prose into short story. So I also split my story by scenes or by actions, and then I write according to the inspiration. So it's very chaotic, my process, but I think the key for a good short story, especially because you have a pre-limited amount of words depending the outlet where it's going to be published, I think the key is to have two things. I have a clear concept of what the story is about and who is the character, what character wants, who are their friends, what's their goal, because at the end of the day, you are focusing basically in one person, one point of view that is trying to show in a very concise way a whole world around them, and that world might not be complete within the story. I mean, you only show a snippet of that world, so you need to be clear of who is the main character in the story, and what's going to talk about. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. I think it's lovely that this is why I really enjoy getting other writers on the show, because I like to compare these things. My process is exactly the reverse of yours. It couldn't be more opposite if it tried, right? I think of things sequentially. So I start at the beginning. I don't really know how it's going to end until I've written the end, right? I'm a discovery writer, like Stephen King, maybe, right? He writes like that, he says in his books about writing. And I end up sifting out a lot of stuff as I'm doing the edits because I overwrite. I always write more than whatever the word count limit is, and I have to go back and go, okay, did I really need this? Is this important? So it's really, I think that's a lovely illustration of the fact that everybody's process is different, and I love the way you do that, actually. That's really cool. I'll throw in something that I'm reading this book on how to write the breakout novel. It's by Donald Mass. For those who don't know, he's the owner of a very successful literary agency that has produced a lot of my favorite science fiction and fantasy writers in particular. And what he says is that the first line should create a question that makes the reader want to continue to read. The example, back to Stephen King again, that he gives is, the gunslinger fled across the desert and the man in black followed. And you're immediately going, okay, what do they mean, gunslinger? Where is this desert? Who is the man in black? Why is he being chased by the gunslinger, right? And that keeps you reading, right? And I would also like to thank Kahuna the Elder for continuing his gift sub. Thank you so much for your support for the channel, Kahuna. You're awesome. And he says, hey, everyone, figured I'd compliment my writing by being surrounded by writers. We also have Jamie Buckley, author of the Wanted Hero series, in the chat. So this is definitely a Writers for Writers stream, and that's kind of cool.
Hi, Jamie.
Hello.
Yeah, okay, so you had more questions, you said. I want to give you an opportunity to ask them, Alan. I don't want to, run over your plans for...
Go ahead and run over all you want. It's totally fine. If you guys want to go right early, go right early. Go for it.
Okay, because I know that we have a lot of writers in the chat, Ricardo just gave us some insight into his process. How about yours, Leo? How do you approach a story? What is your process?
Well, an awful lot of my stories have been written aiming at a particular genre and aiming at a particular market, be it an Inklings one or another one. So I've tended to approach it through that lens of, right, I'm aiming it for a horror story, or I'm aiming it for a pirate story in the case of the most recent anthology. Where do I start from there? What kind of story do I want to tell within that genre? So my writing process often starts from that position of how do I get from starting point to being into that setting, and what kind of story do I want to tell within that setting? So I tend to let it float around in my head for a few days, see what sort of ideas pop up, see which kind of ideas linger for a while and make me want to write them. So when it came to the pirate anthology, for example, I knew as we were getting underway what kind of stories were beginning to come in and everything like that. There was, science fiction space pirate stories. There was time pirate stories and things like that. So I wanted to write something that was a bit more traditional pirates of the time, but throw in something different. So I went for the cosmic horror vein. In a way, I was while starting, I was thinking in the back of my head of an old Robert Howard story, in which Cormac McCart, I think was the character that he had at the time, encountering a temple full of lizard men and having to fight his way out. So I was kind of thinking like, well, if I took a pirate and took him on a journey to an impossible island and what he might uncover there, then that was the inspiration that led me to this particular story. But some other times it's sometimes it's just, it can be a sentence that pops into my head and makes me want to explore the story that fits around that. We had an anthology called Tales of Wonder, which was science fantasy. And my story in that was a story called The Last Sorcerer, in which I came up with the title and I came up with the last line of the story at the same time and thought, ooh, they fit together very nicely. How do I go from A to B? And the rest of the story became A to B. So I tend to start with moments in a story and then build outwards from there, is probably what I would say. Get an idea of where I want to go with the story, and then, like you, start from the beginning and work my way through to get there, which is, I think, probably how my process largely works.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's cool. Question in the chat from Kahuna. How do you keep your dialogue from getting stilted, he asks while writing dialogue.
Well, in my case, I keep repeating it aloud over and over and over until I make it sound natural.
Yeah, that's an excellent approach. I understand that. Yep.
Yeah, I think a really good habit to do with dialogue is just to read it out loud. And as you know, once you've got it on the page, let it cool for a little while, then come back to it, read it out loud back again. And if it sounds weird, it sounds weird. And that's when you change it around.
Yeah. As somebody who writes a lot of like non-fiction scripts, I do the exact same thing. Mm. Which isn't quite dialogue, but it's something that somebody's going to be saying out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, we've tended to do the same here in the journalism side of things for when we've been doing like broadcasts or things like that. You write it down beforehand a bit, and then the things that you sound out beforehand, you know it doesn't sound right, so you swap it around. But also, if as a writer you don't have the ear yourself for being able to tell whether the dialogue sounds weird, read it to a friend. Read it to somebody that you trust that will say that sounds a bit odd.
I find it difficult sometimes because I write things that are not contemporary generally. Balancing the needs of making sure that the dialogue flows naturally and making sure that it's not anachronistic. In some cases, I don't try, right? Like I made, I approached my space opera series of this is a fantasy world. Nobody is speaking English anyway, right? So I don't worry about anachronism. It's a military drama. I try to give that military feel. There's a lot of swearing, right? That probably aren't swear words they would use, right? But my logic to this is you're not trying to where it doesn't, I don't think it blows up the universe. I think that it gives more a sense of this really is kind of a gritty military drama, right? On the other hand, Weird West is a different approach. I want people to feel like they're in a Western. So I try to keep it in that sense. And I write with a hint of accent, but I try not to overdo that so that it's not, understandable, right? So finding that balance can be difficult for me. Like you guys, I read it out or I read it to a friend and see what they have to say about it, right? So Lorraine Allais, in the same vein, asks, how do you keep dialogue from taking over the scene? I'm not even sure that's a problem myself, but...
Yeah.
I find it... Oh, sorry, you go ahead, Ricardo. Sorry.
No, go. You go.
Okay.
Everyone's too polite, damn it.
Not a major problem unless you're kind of using the dialogue for another purpose, like info dumping on people. So, like the classic moment in a fantasy novel when the chosen one turns to the wise old man and says, "Tell me the history of the continent, wise old man," and you end up with 3 pages of dialogue in which it's not really dialogue. It's not really anything that anybody would actually say. It's just being used as a way of smuggling through, "Hey, reader, learn all this." So I think in general, people don't tend to talk at super great length. So if you're trying to keep the dialogue natural, then you're handing off between characters, and you've got that interplay rather than just one super long speech. You don't want to end up with a book that's like the back end of Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, where it's just that super long speech.
Yes, thank
so
you.
If you just think about how you talk with your friends and how you talk with us here, I hand off to Ricardo hands off to Diane, and so on all around the table. If you're letting the dialogue dominate, you're probably doing it for other reasons than using the actual dialogue, I would think, if that makes sense. What do you think, Ricardo?
No, I agree. Dialogue has a function. It's basically convey what the characters are thinking about a particular situation. Well, maybe because it's my background as a lecturer. Yeah, I tend to do a bit of info dumps in my lectures. So I don't see that much of a problem when a character is explaining a lot of things. Personally, again, because of my background, because of what I do every other day. Sorry.
But what I like about your dialogue is that you're really good at establishing friendships through dialogue and building up character and the connections between. And that's what I really like about your dialogue for, in your novel, in the stories that you've written and everything like that. So I don't think you tend to info dump nearly as much as you say you do.
I didn't think so.
Thanks for the comment. No, well, I think the dialogue has one important function, which is to show who the character is. Every person speaks in a different way. We all have different speech patterns. We have different enunciations. And all of those reflect our history as a person.
That's a very good point I had not thoroughly considered. I like that a lot.
So, if, for example, in my novel, there is a character that every other page says, "Oh crap," because his personality is like, "Yeah, this is going to end badly for me, but I'm going to do it anyway because this is what I have to do."
Right.
So it's his way to vent or to rant and say, "Yeah, what I cannot do." So it became that line became this symbol, if you like, of his personality. So that's why I think the dialogue is important, because it helps to convey who the character is without having to write lengthy descriptions of everything they're doing and eating and wearing and thinking, because in reality that's how we get to meet each other, through speaking, through communicating, or through sign language in the case of people with their hard of hearing or deaf, or through braille in the case of people with sight problems. We use language to communicate, to convey who we are. So dialogue I think, is the most important thing within a story. Personally, when I write a scene, I write first the dialogue and then the actions around them afterwards, when I get the dialogue right. Because that gives me a sense of what the characters are doing, are thinking, are feeling, and what are planning to do.
Lorraine added that she sometimes finds herself writing nothing but dialogue instead of the scene when she's writing, but maybe the dialogue is the scene. Sometimes it's about the conflict between characters, or a character is working out an internal conflict that somebody else is helping them with, right? So it's not necessarily bad if it's a bunch of dialogue, right? If you really feel that it needs to be broken up, break it up with body language. Alan scratched his head as he considered what Ricardo had to say. Sable typed it briefly in the chat to answer a question as she listened intensely. Stuff like that.
There's a really great short story by Ray Bradbury called "The Town Where No One Got Off," and all that story is a conversation. It's a story about a man who gets on a train and gets off the train at one of those towns that the train passes where nobody ever gets off. And he just wonders why these trains go past all these towns and why nobody ever gets off. And he decides, I'm going to get off. And so he does. And he meets a local from the town who wondered what it would be like to meet somebody who got off one of these trains. And the two of them just start to talk about who they are, about their circumstances, and about what their real motive was for getting off or for going to meet somebody who got off at the station, and what could happen as a result of that. And it's just conversation. There's no action that really happens in the story whatsoever. So if it works, it works. It doesn't matter. There are no rules to these things that are universal for everything. So if you write lots of dialogue, that just might mean that you're really damn good at dialogue, and that's the way that you should express yourself through the story. If you find yourself writing too much and you know it's too much, well, you already know that. So that's your own inner censor saying, dial it back.
Leo, I was going to say the exact same thing, and everyone has to keep in mind, I'm a critical reader and reviewer. I'm not really a writer of fiction anyway, but I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, you could take any special situation and make it into a story if it works, right? Like Carmen Macchiato has a story that is a Kickstarter post. I mean, that's the whole story, is a Kickstarter. It's this woman who wants to find her sister in hell, basically, and she's trying to get the money to get the stuff to open the portal to hell or something like that.
When people play with format.
Really good.
I gotta find the story
updates, now. As it goes along, she updates the Kickstarter post. You know what I mean? It's super interesting and weird and awesome.
See, now I want to know what the stretch goals are.
Yeah.
Right. Do you carry on to heaven after that? What?
I think it was in the best of U.S. Science Fiction and Fantasy 2016. I think it's in there.
That's great. It's really cool.
I'm going to look for it because, as Leo said, I'm curious about the stretch goals. How many souls you need to pledge to get them?
So I think we better get to some more Alan's questions here, though, because we're
all right.
Running short on time. No, it's cool. I really I've enjoyed this particular conversation for sure.
Well, sure. I've got one particular burning question. It's kind of has nothing to do with anything that we've mentioned already, and it's kind of a non sequitur to a certain degree. But Ricardo, in the new anthology, you mentioned at the end of your story, right? You mentioned that you're related to the one figure in the story. Let's see, I have it here. You say General Guadalupe Victoria, originally named Jose Miguel Ramon. Wow, lots of names. Adocto Fernandez y Felix, hero of the Mexican War of Independence and presidents from 1824 to 1829. And yes, believe it or not, the author is related to him. Okay, so I read that and I'm like, I don't care if it has nothing to do with anything. I need to know more. What? Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that. I just need to hear more.
It happens that my great grandfather, Guadalupe Victoria, was a general under the orders of Jose Maria Morelos San Pabon, one of the leaders of the Mexican Independence War in the state of Mexico. And through a lot of adventures, because there is no other way to explain it, I mean, it could be a pretty cool historical fiction book. He ended up being the first president of the country because no one else wanted the job. He took it. He established links with Great Britain Actually, Great Britain was the first country to recognize Mexico as an independent country, and also lend us a lot of money that we had to pay later on. And after Guadalupe Victoria retired as president, later became senator, later retired completely from political life. And, my father's family comes from his family line. So there is this register in Mexico City, in the main cathedral, where every descendant of the main characters or main actors of the Mexican Independence War are registered to keep a track of who is where their descendants. So, for example, when it was the bicentenary of the independence, there was this ceremony in Mexico City where the government gathered every single living relative of everyone that participated in the independence. Obviously, my family is really small. We were no more than 10. For example, Miguel Hidalgo, who was one of the starters of the independence, had like 200 descendants, for say something. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, I learned about that when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and my dad told me, "Oh, you have this coin." It was a pretty old coin; it's out of print now, and this is our ancestor. Oh, cool! And I have uncles that have written biographies and analysis of his life, so it has. Guadalupe Victoria has some really interesting stories about his life. So it's I don't know what else to say. I mean,
that's just a really interesting story, and what a weird connection. You know what I mean? Like, just what a crazy, strange little thing. You know, did that influence your story in this anthology at all?
A bit, yeah. Well, because the story is taking place within his period as president. So one of the things they tried to do during that time is like make an account of what they have as a country, because obviously after doing as a country earns their independence, they need to take stock of what they have.
Sure.
So the idea was, okay, I have. I thought, well, if I were him, what I will do? Well, I will send people to travel around Mexico, gather stories and information to try to discover who we are as a nation. So the idea is that he has this relative, and he sent it to research these stories in the south of Mexico. And during that time, there were still, I won't say pirates, because the piracy age was coming to an end around that time, but there were still legends about them. And I wanted to, when we decided it was going to be a pirate team for the anthology, I wanted to write something that takes place in Mexico, because I would like other people to get to know a little bit more of my country, of my culture. So I think this is a story I had to do a little more of research in terms of to get the time period and the words and the setting right. I don't know if I did it right, but I can say it's the one that took me a little bit longer to plan.
Well, I think you did an excellent job. It was definitely one of my favorite stories in the anthology, and I'm not just saying that. I really mean it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Okay, so I had Ricardo in the hot seat. Now it's time for Leo to be in the hot seat. Are you ready, Leo?
Bring it on.
Oh, I just muted myself. Jeez. Okay. So it's like I'm at work, accidentally muting myself in the middle of speaking. So, question. So, okay, you're a journalist, right? I don't really see the journalism influence in your writing necessarily. Do you feel that journalism has influenced your writing, and how so?
Ooh, gosh.
I mean, like, it's not like Hemingway where you're like, there's a clear distinction, right?
Yeah, right.
I would say it's affected my process rather than my writing. I tend to use my writing as escapism, really. I mean, my writing came before I ever went into journalism. I was always, as a kid, writing stories. And, you sort of like reach that point in life as a kid where you're like, oh, well, how will I actually make a living? So journalism became the way of making a living. But I would say that in terms of the process, the need to meet deadlines, the need to get on with things, the need to just sort of like the familiarity with constantly editing material and things like that probably helps my process rather than my changing my actual style, probably.
Yeah.
But I guess it also means perhaps I'm more able to write to a target market a bit more easily because you try different writing styles in journalism for whether you're writing news or whether you're writing features or whatever approach you take in journalism. But I would say it's more sort of like the behind the scenes kind of stuff rather than the actual. I don't tend to write any gritty real life kind of stories. It's all science fiction, fantasy, horror, all those kind of things.
Sure. Oh, that totally makes sense. And, that background stuff is just as important. I've heard John Scalzi talk about that exact thing, like being able to write to a market and keep those deadlines, on a tight schedule and that sort of thing. So, I mean, definitely important skills, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, for example, some of the other stuff I tend to do, I do a bit of ghostwriting of biographies and such like as well. And that's obviously a completely different kind of writing again. So sure. It's just focusing your writing in the right way, I guess. But I think it's probably more helped on the production side of things for being able to do the design of the books, the layout of the books, all that kind of thing, and the editing of the stories. So useful in ways other than you actually see. So I guess it's the paddling feet underneath the swan.
Right. That's awesome. So, Diane, we've got like about 10 minutes left.
Yes.
Do you have any questions?
We are threatening to run over time. I apologize. I feel this might go over about 10 minutes. I hope that's not going to be too much of a problem because I have a question I really want to ask. And there are questions from the audience too. Right?
Okay, go
so, I'll start with the audience questions. One question from Barbarossa. What advice do you have in preventing your fantasy from becoming, quote, another high fantasy book? And I know that both you guys are really good at writing stuff that isn't, your standard, bad Tolkien knockoff. So, however you guys want to address that.
I think Ricardo is a really good one to answer that because his novel is very much science fantasy, which draws on all kinds of different traditions. And so I think he's really good at that. So fire away, Ricardo.
100% I agree with you. And I'd just like to throw in, I read it. I did a blurb for it and I'm a fan. So.
Oh, thank you. So how did you avoid to write another high fantasy? Well, the thing is, I don't know, it's because of I'm not much into the sci-fi or fantasy standard canon as the rest of you guys, because back then in Mexico you only got a few books. I mean, so my main inspiration to write fantasy was actually Japanese anime and all 80s cartoons. So what I do is basically I tend to avoid the standard tropes of fantasy, if that makes sense. I mean, high fantasy has you have this chosen hero, which I hate. I hate that trope. I have to say.
Agreed.
As much
totally
as
second that trope.
Yeah,
Sorry?
it's getting old for sure.
I
that
totally
trope.
second that. That trope is so burned out and dead. Yes.
I mean, the only person I have seen that has played well with that trope is Brent, or friend Brent, that created a really interesting story about the not chosen one. I think that's the best interpretation I have seen of that trope in recent years. But basically, I tried to avoid the basic tropes.
Sorry, let me fill in there just a little bit. What Brent did really nicely was he took the trope and subverted it, so that you thought you were getting the trope, then you thought you weren't, and then it came back around again. So that actually, but he's done it really nicely. So, but carry on, Ricardo. Sorry.
So, I would also just interject quickly that trope is problematic on some levels too. But anyway, I don't want to derail the conversation. Go ahead, Ricardo.
No, that's okay. Sorry if I think it's too long. Basically, I try to avoid the tropes. The basic tropes that you have a chosen one, a MacGuffin, and a standard plot where you have these massive battles. I think sometimes a smaller scale is better when you focus on the character rather than in the world building. And I cannot believe I'm saying this because I'm a big fan of world building, as Leo can tell you. But I think the key is high fantasy becomes like this massive play in the theater, or this massive movie. So it has a really fixed set of tropes. So you don't want to go the route, either avoid them or subvert them. I don't see other way to do it, because otherwise the stories come like a copy of a copy of a copy of what other writers did. But the most important thing is write the thing you want to write. Forget about what others say. Forget about what the market is, because the market changes every day. By the time your book is out, the market is already has changed completely. So my advice is write the story you want to write.
I think that's a really good point you're making there about world building as well, Ricardo. I think if you... And you're really good at world building. I love the way you commit to creating all kinds of things that will never appear in the book, but you know the world. And I think if you build the world and if you know the world, then it becomes its own unique thing that will be separate from the homogenous, identical, same kind of fantasy over and over. And I think that's committing to that is how you make sure that you don't that it's unique, that it's your world, that it's something different. That said, there is a market for every book. There are people who'd want to pick up the book, read exactly the same kind of fantasy as they've read previously, and that's what they're after when they pick up a book. So, what, as Ricardo finished off there, write what you want, because in the end, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah, I absolutely do. E. Songbird, in relation to that, added, I really liked the first episode that talked about how Hope Punk can fight against the trope because it can focus on having an average person or community making the significant difference. And I 100% agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
We also had a comment about how...
Ricardo for Hope Punk.
Sorry?
That's Ricardo's genre.
Totally. I would agree that the Withered King is Hope Punk. Absolutely. We also had a comment about the screen here, that it was very popular. People like it. And I figured it was worth having a shout out to our, I don't remember who put together our splash screen here for the podcast. Who did that, Alan?
That would be, I believe, Jane Knoll we're using the art from Jane Knoll, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Dreamforge. But I think Rachel actually put together the actual splash screen itself with that art.
Got it.
We got layers of creativity here.
You bet.
It's pouring out of us.
You bet. Okay, now my big question before we completely run out of time, right? Inklings Press does a lot of charitable stuff. I have noticed that a lot. Like, I have most of your guys' collections now, right? And the reason why I have them is because of various charitable events where you've done, where you're like, okay, so download all these for free and, donate to the Bahamas, hurricane relief fund and stuff like that, right? Do you find, and it's an interesting question, and it's in a way a cynical question, but I bet I know that the answer is not cynical, and that's why I'm asking it. Do you find that it actually helps or hurt sales to do this?
I'm not entirely sure if it really helps or hurts sales, really. We just do it because it's the right thing.
That's awesome.
It's I would imagine perhaps in the long run it might help sales because if somebody picks something up for free, then at some point they read it and they might go, oh, I quite like this author, I've found through this, and they go off and read more. But that's far from even thoughts as motivation. It's just if we can do something to help, we do something to help.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I know that for me personally, I'm far more inclined to pick up books that are created by people who I know are doing good things in the world. I give them, just in general, I'm more favorably disposed. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember those guys. They were the ones who were raising money for, that charity that I supported. Well, I'm probably going to like their worldview and, hey, they're cool people, so I should give them a chance, right? And I wondered about that because there's a thought out there, right, that you should never, ever, 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 ever give anything away for free, right? And I don't know how I feel about that. On one hand, I do believe that it's important to recognize that your work has value and you deserve to get paid for it. That's important, right? On the other hand, I don't think that helping ever hurts. And I just don't know how you guys. I wanted to know how you felt about that.
Well,
I think you don't want to go too far in that. You don't want to create an expectation that everything will be free if you just hang around waiting for long enough. But that said, I equally don't want to always put up a barrier between people if they can't afford it. If people want a copy of a book and they can't afford it, I'm happy to give them a copy of a book. But just, I think, I think you want to be able to give people access to your material so that they can discover you. I think by the process of saying free is always bad, well, in that way, you'd be saying libraries are bad because, I discovered so many authors through libraries. I'm sure libraries pay authors for their books and all of that, but the library user doesn't tend to. So I discovered so many authors that way that have made such a big difference in my life. So I think a bit of free can be a good thing because it sets you on the path to want more.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, Ricardo, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, and I think it all comes to intention. I mean, giving a book for free to help a charity is fine because we are helping others. Giving a book for free to a person that cannot afford a book, or maybe there is not a library in their city, I think that's fine because also to avoid piracy. Giving away for free a book just as a sales market employee is that where I draw the line because, as Leo said, you create expectations and it comes to a point where. And I see this. I say this also as designer. It comes to a point where everyone wants you to work for free for exposure, and that's not the point. I mean, if you are going to give away something you created, it's because you are doing it to help others, not because I don't know how to say it. I'm trying to think. Sorry, this is when speaking your second language is a little complicated.
No problem. That's cool.
Yeah, I think, as I said, it comes with intention. What you are planning to do, or what you want to achieve by doing that. Because at the end of the day, as I see it, we all share the same planet. We are in the same boat. And if we don't help each other, then we are screwed. So, which is a little bit tied to the hop punk genre. We need to help each other. We need to lift each other. we need to create this environment where everybody has the same opportunities to get a good quality of life. So if I giving my book for free to a person that I know doesn't have the means to purchase it, but I know it's going to enjoy it and it's going to make their life a little bit better, even if it's for a couple of hours, then I did my job. Because at the end of the day, well, getting paid for a book is nice. We also need to share things that make people feel better or happy. I don't know how to say this.
No, you're saying it fine. I get you completely, and I agree with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also, if I can throw just one other thing in there, is that authors deserve to get paid.
Yes.
Yes,
sure.
People have devoted their time and their energy to creating something.
absolutely.
Then they deserve to be paid for it. And from the start, one of our things at the Inklings was, we started off with authors being paid through royalty share and moved on towards flat payments. Our goal one day is to be at pro-level payments, but we're not there yet. But that's where we want to get to. But at the end of the day, if people have committed their time and energy to create something, they deserve to be paid. How you use free promotions and free giveaways and things like that for other purposes, that's all fine and everything like that. But for the day-to-day, what you're producing and what you're putting out into the world, people should have money in their pockets at the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
I was just going to say to remember that when we talk about Patreon in like 5 minutes.
Well, the thing is,
Sign me up.
I say this as designer. I see it with my wife when a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, you can do this logo for free." No, it's my work, it's my time. I deserve to get paid. So this is a fine line between a promotion and getting a. Sorry.
I see that an awful lot in the freelance market. There's a race to the bottom to pay the smallest price you possibly can for something.
Yeah.
That's unhealthy.
I think the two words I hate more in the English language is for exposure. I think that's the
yes.
Oh God.
You know what? I can expose myself anywhere, okay?
Sorry?
I said I can expose myself anywhere, okay? Yeah, no, it's kind of how I feel about it, right? Do this for the exposure. Yeah, screw you and your exposure, okay? Right? I gotta eat. I have rent to pay. Come on. Yeah. Right? So, Kahuna adds, my dad's belief was, you aren't paying me for what I do. You're paying me for learning how to do it. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. The E-Song is laughing at my comment, which is fine. Barbarossa says, you are all awesome. And I just wanted to pass that on so that you guys saw it, or heard it, because I know you're not looking at the screen like I am. So, and we also had a posture check and hydrate check, just FYI. Drink your water and straighten up. There you go.
Oh yeah, where is my water? Okay, here it is. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, are we ready for the last question, Diane?
We are ready for the last question.
Okay, so Ricardo and Leo, we asked this question of all of our guests. It's the last thing that we always ask. Well, second to the last thing we always ask. What is bringing you hope right now?
Whoa, that's a loaded question in this year.
I know, right? And that's why it's more important. I know 2020 has been a dumpster fire, really, but what is giving you hope despite the dumpster fire?
I'm going to be really cheesy and say just life at home with my kids and everything like that. 2020 has been horrible in so many ways, but one of the things that it's kind of forced upon my particular circumstances is a lot of working from home and living with the kids. And that one little aspect of it, the bubble of spending time with family, has been great. Horrible the circumstances in which it's been forced upon us, but it's been great. And so that's the thing that is giving me hope going into the next year, that we go into it stronger and better.
Awesome.
Well, in my case, the first shout out has to be to my wife. and her own patients.
Yeah.
I tend to be a very pessimistic, kind of misanthropic guy. I don't like people much. So she's my Jiminy Cricket. She's the one that she's a very positive, optimistic person. So the first thing that brings me hope is her. I won't be here talking about writing if it wasn't for her.
I'm going to write this down and tell this to my wife later. I'm just telling you this.
Yeah.
It's clear that both of our wives are listening into this, so we had to say that.
Yeah, so there's the henpecked line and there's the non-henpecked line, and you guys are standing in the non-henpecked line because you were told you had to.
No. Well,
sorry, it's an old joke. It's an old joke.
I think the other thing that brings me hope is, despite being a kind of misanthropic, as I say, I don't like people much, I do believe that humanity can change things for the better, because history has proved that we can do it. When we want to, we can do it. So, and as a teacher, I see it with my students, how they're moving to and pushing to change things. So I might not be able to see it in a few years because we don't know what is going to happen next year or next week. But I do have hope based on what I see with my students, based on what I see, how things have changed, sometimes for the bad, sometimes for the better, that if we want to, we can improve things. I know it's going to sound cheesy, perhaps. It's going to sound like idealistic or contradictory with a misanthropic point of view, but I don't. We are surrounded right now of a lot of awful people doing awful things. I do believe humanity can change things for the better if we put our minds, our hearts, our hands to the work. And we can see it every day when a person does a small act of kindness for someone else. That's changing the world. That's going to improve things because it becomes a ripple effect. If you act nice to another person, maybe that person is going to return the favor, not to you, but to another one, and another one. And it becomes a chain. So hopefully one day it's going to be better than this. I mean, we are basically touching rock bottom. We cannot go worse than this, I hope.
That's a good point. I agree with you. I do.
Yeah.
Barbarossa wanted to add specifically to you, Ricardo, the quote that is true about all humanity: this too shall pass. Yeah, it will. There will not be a global pandemic forever. Fascism is always defeated in the end. It will happen.
We have to believe it will happen, because if we don't believe that, we are not going to do anything. And if we believe that things can get better, we can start working for that.
Exactly. That's great.
That's a perfect note to end on. Last things to ask you guys, what are the upcoming projects and where can we reach you just one last time?
Yeah, when's the sequel to The Withered King coming out, damn it?
Get right in.
Actually, the official date, if everything goes according to plan and an asteroid doesn't hit us, is going to be from tomorrow in 1 year. Around 14th of August.
14th
next year.
of August.
Currently,
okay.
I'm editing the book. Yeah. I'm in the first round of edits. And hopefully it's going to be ready for that date. So don't worry, it's going to the sequel. The book is done. It's just the editing process that is taking a little bit longer than expected.
I hear you.
Well, having a day job and a writer job is a bit. It's not conducive to be more productive as I want.
No, for sure.
Totally understandable. Totally.
For me, I've got probably next on my agenda is a collection of various short stories of mine that have been published in different venues, just pulling it together into one place that I'll put out on Amazon. So that'll be a sequel to my collection Quartet, which I'm going to call with staggering ingenuity, quintet.
Oh, brilliant.
Our writing group is also trying to encourage or push or pressure Leo to get his novel done.
Yeah.
One of his 3 projects of novel, so...
Get it done, Leo. I'll crack the whip over you, especially if you're going to do Nano this year.
So yeah, hopefully his novel is going to be out sometime soon.
I do have to get on with that. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes. Feel guilty now.
Sorry to pressure your public, but hey, you are not leaving me more options. I want to read your book, damn it.
Awesome.
All right. Well,
where do we find you guys online here? That's another thing too.
Yes.
Sorry, say again. I missed that bit.
Sorry, where do we find you guys online? I've got your Amazon pages here. I suppose I can link them in the chat.
Sure. I have a blog, which is www.alteredinstinct.com. And that's also my Twitter handle, which is @AlteredInstinct. That's ALTEREDINSTINCT. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I spend most of my writing time in Twitter, so you can find me there. I'm sorry if I cannot spell it because that's not my forte when speaking English, but is winged _Leo.
Yeah, it's I'll help you out, Ricardo. WINGED _LEO.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I have a blog, which I haven't updated a little bit because I have been busy writing a book, which is in my website, www.ricardovictoriau.com.
And Ricardo's also the webmaster for the Inklings Press website, which is inklingspress.com.
Excellent. All right, it is now giveaway time, but we've had a strange turn of events in this podcast. Diane, we need to figure this out live here.
Okay.
Leo and Ricardo, both right before we went live, offered to give away free copies of their books. So that would be, Ricardo, your first novel, right? And
yes.
The Tales from the Pirates Cove from Inkling Press, which is an anthology about pirates, and pretty darn good.
Well, we should totally give away their books. That makes sense to me, and put aside whatever we had planned for our giveaway till the next episode, and that's cool. I recommend them both, right? Inklings Press always puts out good work, and The Withered King was amazing. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
thank you, guys.
I had foolishly said I would give 2 paperback copies, which, of course, completely neglected those people that prefer electronic copies. So I shall make it 2 paperback copies plus 2 electronic.
All right.
Oh, jeez. All right.
The offer, in the case, the offer is the same to paperback and to electronic. Obviously, the paperback, I need to send the information of who is going to receive it to my publisher because they are the ones that are going to send the actual book. And they told me that be patient with them because of the current issues with UPS. So it may take a little bit longer to
Oh,
get the
yeah.
physical
So,
copy.
yeah.
But,
yeah. Go ahead, Ricardo. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, just to explain to anybody who's not dealing with the American postal system, it's currently being sabotaged,
dismantled,
perhaps?
destroyed, exploded. Yeah.
So this actually brings up a good point Diane and I had talked about right before the show is we really need you all to sign up for giveaways. I know it's a horrible thing. Please sign up for the giveaways because I still have some over here from my collection. Diane has some stuff, and God knows if we're even going to have a post office in a week or two in the United States. So please do that.
Yes, let us give them away. And here's how it works, guys. We want you to do nice things for someone else. we would like you to nominate someone who needs cheering up, someone you want to thank, someone that, you just think is amazing, whatever. They can be your friends, your family, somebody you know at work. I don't care, right? It's your responsibility to get their address to us if you win, but nominate someone else, cheer them up, nominate each other in the chat. Come on, guys, we want to give this stuff away, and people are usually, pretty, yeah, hey, actually, that's a good point. Barbarossa says, I need cheering up and I'm pretty all right. Can I nominate him? I mean, I probably can't, but, nominate each other, right?
That is a really cool way to do it. Love that.
Yeah. Right? And you can do it here, which I'm hoping that we'll get a bunch before we quit, right? You can do it in our Discord, which, let's see here. I should have it. I don't have Discord open on my computer currently to send the invite. Right? Lorraine says she nominates Kahuna, which is awesome. Thank you. I hoped you would do that. Just a second, I'll fire up my Discord so that I can send you the invitation to our Discord server. If you're on my Discord server, you can do it there. You can do it at our, we have a Facebook page. There's our podcast page. We have a WordPress site. What's email? Yeah, give them the email address.
itgo.don'tpanic@gmail.com. ITGO don'tpanic@gmail.com. And I will say, we usually wait a couple weeks before we pick a winner, and just in case somebody, doesn't want to be public about it, that's totally fine. And we still owe the last person that signed book from Cat Rambo, so we got to get that going too.
Actually, that's right. Hold on. I do believe that was actually Barbarossa who won that, if I recall correctly. Was it not? Is that not what I said?
I believe it was.
There you go. And I know he's in the chat, so, get us your address and we'll send it to you. Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's see. Let's do the Patreon stuff and then let's call it a day. If you like what we're doing, share us on Twitter or like us on Twitter, Facebook, share us with your friends, tell people about us. If you really, really like what we're doing, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/ifthisgoeson. Something we did recently was we asked our Patreon members who they would like us to interview next. So we will be having P. DeJelly Clark come on soon. That is officially confirmed as of, last week. If you haven't read his stuff, you should go and read his stuff immediately. He is excellent. But we have mostly been encouraging people just to donate to great, awesome things like BLM or, non-fascist politicians, things like that, that's totally fine. We are doing okay monetarily speaking right now. So we really encourage you to make the world a better place first, and then worry about us second.
Exactly.
And then, so thanks to our guests.
Yes, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. This was every bit as much fun as I hoped it would be.
And
delighted to be here.
Oh, sorry, Leo.
I was just saying delighted to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation again. I'm happy to having me here with you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we definitely enjoyed it. Real quick, some credits before we go. If This Goes On, Don't Panic is edited by Alan Bailey, that's me, with production by Sound Maiden, that's Rachel. Our theme music is by Father Flamethrower, additional music by Christopher Snydrosky, outro music by Sable Aradia, that's Diane. Intro by Dave Robinson. A special thanks to our guests, Ricardo Victoria and Leo McBride. And thanks everybody out there for supporting us, and we'll see you again soon.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.